Thank you for joining for today's webinar about cybersecurity. This week is Global Data Privacy Week, so perfect week to start this invitation. We have our presenter Scott and our host Fred on the call. Fred, over to you to kick this off.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us at this Lunch and Learn event called Protecting Municipalities from Digital Threats, courtesy of PSATC Central Region. Again, thanks a lot for organizing this. And we're excited that we're doing this for you guys, for our municipalities and related organizations. Because this week is, like mentioned, is Data Privacy Week. So we have my good friend Scott Davis, who's the chair of Cybersecurity Association of South Pennsylvania. I will also have to mention that he's also the elected Lower Paxton Constable, which is next door neighbor to Susquehanna Township, where I'm a commissioner at. So he gracefully accepted our request for us for him to present on digital threats for our municipalities. So also, disclaimer, I'm also the vice chair for Cybersecurity Association of Pennsylvania. It is Scott and I we've been having these discussions for a long time about how do we help municipalities, local governments, and above, to really take digital threats seriously. And this is one of those things that we can do for you guys. So take it away, Scott.
Yeah, Alok, Fred, thank you guys. That's an amazing introduction. Really couldn't have said it better myself. But when we look at the overall aspects of how do you protect municipalities from digital threats, there's physical aspects that go along with it. And as Fred mentioned, I'm also an elected constable here in Lower Paxton Township. So I get some of that training from a physical security aspects through there, as well as the 25 plus years now I have working in technology and cybersecurity. So today we want to discuss, some of the common threats that you're going to see from digital aspects, as well as some physical stories that go along with it. And at the end, some takeaways on really helping you protect your municipality from those digital threats. So first and foremost, a little bit about myself. I have spent 25 years in leadership doing technology, cybersecurity, and compliance standards. You think back 25 years ago, you can say, well, really, there wasn't a term cybersecurity 25 years ago because it looked a lot different as far as the landscape goes. But the baseline of threats haven't changed, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. I have 8 years of expertise in building and managing IT postures for municipal governments, so it's not something I'm not aware of. I've been in your environments. I understand every penny matters. It's a lot like a nonprofit. You want to do your due diligence to the taxpayers, making sure every dollar you spend is going into the right areas for the good of the community, for the good of your data security. I am the chairman of the Cybersecurity Association Pennsylvania. Fred is the vice chairman. We just brought him on to really take the association to the next level. So Fred, thank you for inviting us here today. I've been a global cybersecurity presenter. I've delivered cybersecurity presentations in over 7 countries and many more virtually. And I have extensive compliance experience with FedRAMP, StateRAMP, CMMC, CJIS, which is the law enforcement, criminal justice information systems, HIPAA, PCI DSS, NIST, GDPR, which gets over into the other side of the pond in Europe, SOC 2, CIS controls, and I've done a lot of work with cyber insurance requirements over the last few years as well. So the digital threats that are threatening your municipality, this is a small list, but it's probably some of the key ones that you're experiencing throughout your municipality. Everyone out there is going to talk to you about social engineering. I'm not going to say anything new about social engineering, anything that you haven't heard before, but I am going to try to phrase it a little bit differently and maybe a way to get you to open your eyes differently around it. Ransomware is still out there. People are still getting hijacked. The ransomware is still working, which as long as it's working and as long as they're getting paid a ransom, it's not going to go anywhere. As we see more of apps, services, and everything is migrating to these subscription services in the cloud, configurations are a crucial threat. And if it's not configured right, it could be open. It could open your doors to your data being accessible by someone else. I mentioned physical threats. We're going to get into that a little bit. aging hardware and software. I can tell you in every municipal government that I've walked into, I have found at least somewhere there's some old hardware, some old software sitting. It may not be used, but it's out there, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to have a conversation of a life cycle, making sure we're rotating that hardware, that software accurately. IoT vulnerabilities are a growing threat, and when we talk about IoT devices, a lot of times I rewind and I go back pre-COVID, and the typical user had, one, maybe two IP addresses. But today they're coming back into the office and they have a smartwatch, a smartphone, their computer, a laptop, sometimes a desktop. They may have a picture frame. They may have this device, an Alexa. There's a lot of different IoT devices that are coming back into an office. And we have to be aware of those from a security standpoint because most of those devices don't get patched. We see an emerging trend with deepfake and AI fraud. And I wouldn't do service if we didn't talk about passwords because that's still, if you don't lock the door, someone can get in. So first and foremost, let's jump in to social engineering. Social engineering is the use of psychological manipulation to trick people into divulging sensitive information. It's essential to train your employees to recognize and report social engineering attacks. There's different types of social engineering that can occur. It could be physical social engineering. When I say physical social engineering, you can go way back in time to the Trojan horse. If the Trojan horse was a Trojan pig and the king hated pigs, would he open those gates and allow the Trojan pig to come through it? Probably not. He'd be like, ew, it's an ugly pig. But that Trojan horse, he had an aspiration, a love of horses. He opened his doors. He allowed that army to come in, stuck inside that Trojan horse through manipulation of social engineering to get those gates open. Spear phishing or a targeted attack. Municipal governments are prone to this because you list your employees a lot of times online, who the police chief is, who the borough manager or the township director or the XYZ. This is public information, and every piece of the puzzle an attacker can use allows them to target a phishing attack against an elected official, a secretary, or anyone within the office. Smishing is growing. That's phishing over text messages. And why that's important to discuss is it's a smaller screen. And with smaller screens, there's smaller messages, but it's harder to identify the threats with the training that most employees go through that teaches the common red flags of a typical email phish. Misspellings, bad grammar, hover over the links. We've been through that basic training, but how do you mouse over a link inside a text message? Vishing is taking place over phone calls. I can tell you I've gone through penetration tests where I've called an organization, said, hey, I'm Scott from Comcast. I got to come out, take a look at the modem. We're getting some, weird things coming from it. I'll be at the office in 2 to 4 hours. Now, that's a combination of vishing because I'm using the phone to start the physical aspect of it. But now when I arrive, there was a conversation that, hey, I'm coming from Comcast. It looks like I'm from Comcast. You called ahead. It must be true. I've used now social engineering in a multi-factor step to establish credibility, to allow you not only into the building, but oftentimes into your data closet where your data resides. Business email compromises happen as well. And a lot of it starts with that social engineering to gain access, but it could be your environment or it could be one of the vendors that you use. We've seen business email compromises take place where a vendor sends emails of, hey, this is our new wire transfer information, or your password's been reset. I need you to go here, type your current password, your old password. Well, now I have your current password, and you have no idea of what was really happening. CEO fraud, it's the same sort of thing with a township manager. It's, hey, the township manager's in a board meeting. Hey, I can't do something right now, but we have a bunch of residents coming out today for a parks meeting later. I need you to go over to Best Buy and pick up 10 gift cards. To the end user, they're not thinking anything about it. It's like, okay, well, this is common. The borough manager, the township manager, they're often running around. They're busy. How do I get this so I can help them? I want to do them a favor. I want to show them I'm a good employee. And probably the most accurate And probably what's different with social engineering that I discuss that most people don't is the emotional attachment to it. If I can find the emotional click in your head to get you to click that link via text message, email, in person, whatever, I've socially engineered the environment. I've socially engineered the experiment. And why that's important is think about it this way. If you've ever had a kid or you've seen a kid throw themselves on the floor at a grocery store because they want a toy or a toy store, I know Toys R Us isn't around anymore, but a kid throwing themselves on the floor, you think the kid's just being bad. They're throwing a tantrum. They're upset because someone said no to them. They are socially engineering at that moment to get the parent to a point where they are either upset, embarrassed, distressed, to the point that they say yes. If that kid successful gets that yes, they've successfully socially engineered that situation to get what they want. Being a parent of three, I am probably socially engineered every day without me realizing it from the kids. But the reality is there are tell signs that we can use to make sure we're staying aware even when emotions matter. Social engineering attacks can be prevented by training employees to recognize and report suspicious activities. The real challenge with social engineering is oftentimes you don't know you've been breached or compromised for a couple days or a week later when you get a random message from IT saying, hey, are you traveling right now? Because we're getting some logins showing that you're in Texas or you're in Ukraine or China. So sometimes it's so well disguised that you don't even know you've been breached. So it is critical to educate employees on all the different types of social engineering, phishing, pretexting, and how to respond to them. Your end users should never feel they will be punished in reporting something stating, hey, it just felt a little fishy to me. I don't know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad, but can you just make sure that I haven't been hijacked? That is the mentality end users need to have when thinking of, this looked normal, but something didn't feel right or something, this or that. So we all have to do a better job training. I kind of talked a little bit about those emotional clicks already, that emotional clicks that's using the emotional trigger like fear, excitement, curiosity, urgency to trick someone into clicking on a malicious link or downloading malware. When we think, I used the kid example earlier, but another one, I had some clients that I was working with down in the Baltimore area. And right after the bridge collapsed, within 24 hours, I had a newsletter, looked like it was coming from a local media station, that went out to everyone stating new traffic patterns to be put in place. Click this link to learn how to get to and from around the Francis Scott Key Bridge or whatever. And it's amazing the amount of success I had in people clicking the link. Not that success was bad, but success in educating them. Cyber criminals will utilize natural disasters, big events, the Super Bowl coming up. How quickly I could go in and create an email saying, hey, win Super Bowl tickets. The first 50 people are entered. Act now, click this link. If you love the Eagles, if you want to get out there and you want to chant your Eagles on to victory, you're going to click that link and you're not going to think twice about it. Emotionally, the training that I have has been thrown out the window. If it sounds too good to be true, 9 times out of 10, it is. It's important that we're all aware of the emotional triggers that hackers are using. Hackers are becoming artists in a way where they're identifying ways to use emotional controls to get those clicks. They were super successful with it during the COVID years, where it was the need to know what was open, what was closed, what I can do, what I can't do, outweighed the training. And that's what emotional clicks are all about. With social engineering, we are seeing more and more power of the deep fakes. It could be audio, video, images. It's being used to impersonate elected officials, spread misinformation, manipulate public trust. If you see here, this isn't a real picture. I went on to Meta AI, Facebook's AI, and I said, give me a picture of Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris smiling. And this is what it gave me. That looks like a good picture. In fact, every picture throughout this presentation was AI generated just to kind of show you the different scope and different things that you can do with it. But pictures are one thing. Pictures build a level of trustworthiness because, hey, there's a picture tied to it. But we're seeing more and more when you're uploading those TikToks or the Facebook videos or this or that, a cyber criminal can take snippets of those videos, inject it into an AI processing, and now they have your voice. They have your audio track. So now when I pick up the phone and I call, I sound like Donald Trump. I'm not Donald Trump, but I sound like him. And I'm asking you to join me at the inauguration with this exclusive offer that's going to be emailed to you shortly, but you have to act fast. So now you had a phone call from the president, sounded recording. It wasn't him direct. We understand that, but an audio recording giving trust, giving information, and that's followed up with that email of trust. Now I'm getting a higher success rate on that click. Attackers are deceiving your employees into authorizing transactions, leaking data, and even making policy decisions sometimes. I talked about it a couple minutes ago, and here you can see it may be a little small on the screen, but using ChatGPT, write an email template that highlights PA Governor Shapiro announcing new cybersecurity grants available to PA municipalities. You will be prompted to log in with your Microsoft 365 credentials to authorize and validate your eligibility in receiving up to $1 million in grants for your municipality. The form will be shut down on January 29th at 3 p.m., so act fast to secure that much needed funds. So years ago, when you got a phishing email, it had the spelling errors, it had bad grammar, it had ugliness tied to it. But when you look at this template right here, this is well written, it's grammatically secure, it's accurate, it's telling you that, hey, you're going to have to put in your Microsoft 365 credentials to authorize and validate your eligibility. And there are scripts out there that I can download and I can put into place on a fake website that looks like Microsoft 365, gets you to put your information in, attempts to log in on the back end of 365, and if it prompts them for a multi-factor authentication, it prompts you for one too. So it completes the entire process of logging you in. Again, if it sounds too good to be true, or it's rushing you to make a decision, like right now, you have less than 3 hours to act if you want up to this $1 million in funds. Well, we all know municipalities are struggling for funds, especially for technology refreshes. So that $1 million can go a long way. So don't take the bite. Don't become a victim, and don't rely on the old way of thinking when it comes to social engineering. So we're going to jump into a quick video here real quick. And this kind of just shows you how a piece of the puzzle can shed so much additional light on someone. And this is an important video, and I like showing it because it outlines how an attacker can take one piece of information and make it 10-fold or 20-fold. And the more pieces of the puzzle I can put together, the more information I have about you, the more likelihood, the higher likelihood I have of being able to successfully breach you. So let's go ahead and watch this real quick and give my voice a break.
Hi, can I help?
Hot chocolate.
What's the name?
Joel.
What was the name?
Alex.
Alex. There you go, Johnny. If you like our Facebook page, we give you a free hot drink and a free pastry.
We have a new like for Damien. We have a new like for Damien.
Standing by. Hi there, can I help?
Yeah, just like your Facebook page.
Okay, I'll search Facebook now. Searching Google. A phone number.
I've got his email address.
Okay, Carly, are you ready for Damien?
Yep, I am.
This maiden name is bank with
Ollie, again, no, it's this one.
Name? Nicholas.
Nicola. His date of birth, 7th of May. He lives in
Just a couple of seconds.
children, previous address.
Yep, got it. Damien, age 26 and a fitness instructor.
Oh, do you know where that?
Where did you go to UCL? Martin went to South Thames College, assistant psychologist at Great Ormond Street. How did you know?
I don't think it was there.
Oh, better.
You know, I'm a Christian as well.
Oh, yeah, we know everything about you, Martin. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Anna from Russia.
So that video highlights the capability of having just one small piece of information. Having you like a page gives me your first name and last name. From that, I have a link to your Facebook page. Are you posting pictures of your pets? Are you posting pictures of your parents? Are you talking about a recently deceased person in your family? Every bit of piece of information you share online, I don't want to say can be used against you, but it could be used against you. And cyber criminals are utilizing all the different pieces of the puzzle. And when they can put together, I have your Facebook page, tie it into your LinkedIn page. I know where you went to college. I know when you graduated, where you went to high school. I know so much about you that I can bypass a lot of basic security controls to get additional information on you and ultimately either breach you with information available publicly or in the dark web, or using it to do a spear phishing attack against you. Another threat vector that I really believe we all have to talk about more is QR codes. So when you go to a website and you type in www.google.com, you know where you're going. You know you're going to google.com. When you click a link in an email, we're trained to hover over that, make sure it's taking us to google.com, making sure that that's trusted, that's validated. When you scan a QR code, there's sometimes really hard to identify that. If you try to scan that QR code right now, it's going to pop up. It's going to look like a short URL. You're not going to understand where it's taking you or why it's taking you to this certain site. All you know is, hey, there's information that I want on this flyer that I need to click this scan this QR code. We're going to see it in a couple weeks during the Super Bowl. The number of ads that are going to have QR codes encouraging people to scan them from the TV is going to be record setting. If you were at the farm show in central Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago, I counted over 100 QR codes just walking around for a couple hours to the different sponsors and even in the different halls. QR codes are great for marketing. They're great as it's an input into the device. But I have done use cases where I've replaced QR codes with the permission of the restaurant or something to take you to a hijacked page before delivering you to the actual menu. So from your mobile device, you got the end result. You got the menu you wanted so you could order food. But what happened between that initial scan to the point that you got that menu? It could have prompted you to download an app to view the menu. It could have prompted you to put in information like your first name, last name, or an email address, maybe a password. There's all types of things that can be done with QR codes that I would say everyone should scan QR codes extremely cautiously. If you're doing marketing and you're including QR codes, our recommendation from the association is always put the URL that you want people to go to. Even if they have to go there and click a couple links to get to that final result, letting the user have the choice of going to www.penncyber.com or letting them know where to click, knowing them where to scan, things like that. Ransomware, I mentioned it earlier, ransomware is not dead. Over the last 24 hours, and this was as of yesterday, I didn't update the date there, but this was as of last night, there were 22 ransomware victims. In January so far, there's been over 600. In the last 90 days, there were over 2,000 ransomware victims reported. In 2024, over 6,000. In 2023, over 5,000. Ransomware is successful because it works. If you don't have a good backup, if you don't have a business continuity plan or an incident response plan documented on what to do if you get ransomware, then you're not prepared for a ransomware attack. Some of the recent breaches included AT&T, National Public Data, Ticketmaster, Change Health, TeamViewer. There's a lot of them out there. And I think just this morning, there was a healthcare one that originally was 100 million records, and now it's 190 million, their patients were impacted over it. Ransomware is impacting businesses. And again, if you don't have a plan in place on the incident response plan, business continuity, if you haven't looked at it in over a year, it's time to revisit it and make sure ransomware is documented in it. You know, with misconfigurations, there's a couple things. Most municipal governments don't have in-house IT. Some of you do, and that's great. And usually if you do, they're small teams. And we're asking sometimes small teams to do an awful lot. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be getting you set up, getting it to a point that it runs and it works, and then forgetting about it. It is critical that we're checking on the settings on at least a quarterly basis, because Microsoft will change settings within 365, or Adobe will change this, or XYZ will change that. But you're increasingly relying on cloud services to store, manage your critical data. It could be citizen records, financial transactions, whatever it may be. Misconfigurations in these cloud environments can open you up to a huge attack and compromise. It could be weak access controls. Maybe someone's using a really simple password. Public exposure. The amount of times that I see people using Azure blobs to store data so it's not being stored locally on a server anymore, and they don't check the box to uncheck public access. It's like, well, it's hard to find the URL. Well, no, it's really not. If I'm just scanning randomly URLs that are known to be Microsoft Azure URLs. Unencrypted storage is another one. Making sure we're doing the basics on the devices that you have. And encryption is a crucial thing. It's a CJIS requirement. It's a requirement of FedRAMP, a requirement of StateRAMP. StateRAMP's not applied today, but realistically, it's only a matter of time until the legislator comes in and says, hey, PA municipalities, you guys need to follow StateRAMP. That's the federal government's guidelines on what states should be doing from a municipal government standpoint. So not configuring things the right way can create significant cybersecurity risks and ultimately build a distrust with your end users, your citizens that are trusting you to retain this information and keeping it secure. Physical security. You probably have a door access, system in place that, people are scanning key fobs or something else. But for a lot of the day, your door's open. People can walk into your lobby. People can explore. Do you have a network closet accessible that has a door open? Maybe the air conditioning inside that room's not working. Do you have network ports that are open with the plugs connected on the back end? So, hey, every once in a while we plug something in out there and it works, blah, blah, blah. Or even a Wi-Fi network. If your Wi-Fi network is open, if I can get connected to your network, it is an avenue that I can now start looking to see what else I can get to. What else is on that network? What else is here? Conference rooms are great, but I've been in so many conference rooms and the Wi-Fi password for the production, the business network, the municipal network is written on the side, is written on the whiteboard, or a picture of it is up on the wall, like a printout of it. If I can get on your production network, all the data that's on that network is at risk and potentially now compromised. It could be device theft. If you're not encrypting devices and you don't have policies in place that outlines what end users are allowed to take home on the computers, any information that potentially is on that computer, if that device is stolen and not encrypted, that is a breach. It is a notificational attempt if the data is on there requires it. Infrastructure tampering. I mentioned earlier doing a pen test, calling ahead saying, hey, I'm Comcast, I'm coming out, I'll be there in 2 to 4 hours. I show up in 3 hours. I'm shown back in the network closet. And hey, I just take a USB stick, I plug it into the server, and that little USB stick has the capability of broadcasting a Wi-Fi network that I can then access while I'm in the parking lot. And you think I've gone. You think I fixed the issue with the Comcast modem and I'm out the door, but that little USB stick is feeding me information about your network. It is critical anytime you let anyone into any of your network rooms, your data closets, your sensitive areas, that you should have a sign-in log. You're tracking who those people are, and you're validating they are who they are. Vandalism, after hours, someone breaking into the building, someone stealing a couple things. Natural disasters are threats as well. If your building is located in a flood zone, or a hurricane comes through, or the forest fires out in California right now, are you prepared to get your municipality back up and running in a timely fashion to serve your citizens that are also going through the same disaster you're going through? So not only do you have to be a step ahead and be prepared to serve those citizens, but you're doing it while your head's chopped off, or you're running around like a chicken with your legs cut off. It's the same sort of thing. And it all falls down to proper planning, your policies, your procedures, so that you're prepared when that disaster strikes, when someone unauthorized accesses the building, when a laptop theft is identified and reported, when someone that said they were with Comcast wasn't really with Comcast. Another common technique that I've used is walking in with 10 pizzas and saying, oh, someone ordered these, where do you want me to put them? Well, if I walk in with 10 pizzas, the likelihood of the wonderful receptionist saying, oh, here, I'll take them back to the break room, more times than not, I get the door open for me as I'm carrying the pizzas and the drinks and everything else. And it's like, just carry them down to the break room. They're right down here on the left. Well, on the right was the data closet. On the left was the break room. I put the pizzas down. I go over to the IT closet quick, drop that USB in, or I grab some information, and I'm out the door. Maybe with that pizza bag that was keeping the pizzas warm, I have a computer, I have some server, I have some paperwork. They're all threats that we have to be aware of. Aging hardware, outdated security patching, unsupported systems, incompatibility. It comes with incompatibility with the modern defenses that your IT teams are using to protect you. If you still have a Windows XP machine, you're at a huge risk. If you're still running a Windows 7 machine, it's no longer supported from Microsoft. Later this year, there's a number of operating systems that are going end of life as well. So it's making sure that you're staying updated on those security patches, you're running supported systems, you're staying within compliance for those tools, so that the other tools that you're using for security can protect you. If you're bringing in, or say you have a line of business application that won't run past that Windows 7, it is business critical, I can't get rid of it. We get it. It is what it is. Budgets are tight. Making sure that device is fully segmented from your network, from your internet connections and everything else, allows you to do what you need to do while creating a level of security around that device. At the end of the day, if there's a business application on there, it should never need internet connection if it's still using Windows 7. And there's no updates or stuff that you're getting for it, because chances are that application is end of life, or they want you to move to the new subscription service, which is 50 times more expensive, that's cloud-based. Aging hardware, aging software, we all have to do a better job of getting into a lifecycle replacement. I always recommend try to replace your workstations, your desktops once every 4 years. Can a computer work 5, 6, maybe 7, 8 years? It can, depending on the use case for that machine. But for your prime users that, hey, if your computer went down for a day or 2 days, depending on how you're getting equipment delivered to you, what is the ramification of an employee sitting there twiddling their thumbs for a day or 2 days? It's more expensive than it would have been replacing that computer on a cycle base and a rotation. Oh, too far. So IoT devices, I mentioned it earlier. IoT devices are easy targets for cyber attackers. They have weak security measures. And you think about how many different IoT devices are out there: smart speakers, smart light bulbs, smart curtains, smart fridges, smart microwaves, smart ovens, smart this, smart that. Everything is smart. Everything has Wi-Fi. Everything is, this IoT device. And one of the most common IoT devices that's out there is actually your printer. And the printer, if that's not getting regular maintenance, regular security patches, then that's just as much of a risk as every other IoT device out there. And everyone has printers within their building that are either Wi-Fi connected or network connected that works. Looking at every IoT device and identifying what it needs to communicate to do what it needs to do, and does it serve a business purpose? If it doesn't serve a business purpose, it either needs to be on a guest network separated from everything else, or simply a policy written that it's not allowed inside the building. I love the benefit of having those digital picture frames or an Alexa at your desk. It works. It allows you to do cool things. You can ask it questions. It can do math. There's business purposes, I guess, but the security risks of it listening, transcribing conversations, listening to confidential things, recording this, like it's just not worth the risk. So, following that pattern of making sure you have good policies and procedures in place, having a policy in place and your end users knowing what is appropriate to bring into the office and connect to the network, what is not, is a conversation that you should be having if you're not today. Passwords. We've all been there. You're typing in a password. It's not strong enough. And you're like, oh my God, it's like 45 characters. It's like, this is beyond strong enough. Today's recommendations, length over complexity. The longer the password, the more secure it's going to be. Complexity matters. You want to still use lowercase, capitals, numbers, symbols whenever possible, but the length is the more important piece. It has actually been proven that passwords should not be expiring every 90 days, like probably many of us are used to. The reason being is users are creatures of habit. And what you've done with your password is you just went from 1 to 2 to 3, or an exclamation mark to a number sign to a percentage. We're not making the passwords any stronger. We're just adding one little thing to it to make it pass the test, to make it acceptable for me to use. I would rather a user have a 12-digit password that they don't have to change unless it pops up in a compromise, than them changing the password and just adding a 1, a 2, a 3 to the end of it. You also have to screen against compromises in the dark web. Your vendor that you're using, or a tool, maybe your insurance program, has dark web monitoring included for you. And you should be monitoring against those compromises. When a user is hit, even if it doesn't say the password was compromised, the best practice should be update that password anywhere that you're using that password. Passwords that are being used for municipal business or business as a whole should also not be used for anything personal. We shouldn't be using the LinkedIn password as our banking password, as the password we use to log into the computer. We need to have different passwords. If you're in a role that you have a lot of passwords that you're managing, use a password manager. It allows you to have secure passwords, to track the security of them, and going through those processes. MFA is mandatory. It's not even a question anymore. It is required from a CGIS standpoint if you're logging into computers, to every tool that you're using that has CGIS data inside of it. Multi-factor authentication is mandatory for everyone. It's somewhere between 80–95% of attacks are stopped if MFA is enabled. So it's just ridiculous. Think of it as your door. If you have a door to your office or to your house, you have the door handle that has the lock. That's your password. That's saying, okay, I have my single factor, my key to get me in the door. Your deadbolt is multi-factor authentication. That's that extra step that I need, that separate key to get into that next step. Another thing that we should be working towards is eliminating secret questions. A lot of times you can't do anything because it's the vendor itself that's doing it, that you're working with. But if you have anything that's asking for, what high school did you go to? What was your mother's maiden name? What was your first car? I can find all that information out in minutes just by doing a simple social media inquiry of the user. In fact, years ago, people were doing that against celebrities and calling Apple and giving Apple their secret answers to get into those celebrity accounts, getting the pictures, getting their iCloud data, getting their contact lists. It's time to eliminate the secret questions, or if you're using secret questions or you're forced to use them in many cases, don't answer them accurately. You know, if it's asking me for my first car, I'm telling it what my favorite vacation spot is. And what I'm doing is I'm going into my password manager and I'm saying my first car was a trip to Disneyland or, you know, something else. It's, you can make it up. You can make those answers whatever you want. It doesn't have to be an answer to the question. It's just a way for them to validate through a second step that you are who you are. So I got one more video here I want to play. So let's go ahead and watch this.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon,
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania,
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, great.
Like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. As you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1.
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie 6, 12,
9.
95.
Yes.
Got it.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Like
So
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's that simple. This is a live interview on the side of the street for a Jimmy Kimmel show. You know they're up to no good, but when you're in that environment, it's like, oh, the excitement, I'm here. Oh, they're asking me questions. I'm going to answer those questions. It's passwords aren't secure. That multi-factor authentication step gives that. So when a user does make a mistake and says my password's Maria 61225, I'm now have that extra step of that 6-digit code that's there to protect your data, your security, and ultimately your citizens. At the end of the day, you can't secure what you don't know. We've gone through and we've talked about a lot of different things over the last 40 minutes. And we've talked about things that you've heard before and hopefully some things that you haven't thought about or haven't, you know, really gotten into. But it is important for you to know what's going on. It's also important for you to have a third party validate where you stand. It's not good practice. And actually, when you're going through a security audit, you can't have the company that's protecting you do your audit for you and say, hey, we're doing everything perfect. We're great. Because they're looking at it from their eyes, their perspectives. And a lot of times they're missing things because they're so used to doing it their way and they believe that methodology is the right way to do it. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. I'm not saying what they're doing isn't protecting you. But what I am saying on an annual basis, it is important and it's critical for every organization, every municipality to do even a lightweight security audit to identify where you stand from a cybersecurity and a physical security perspective. It's important to know what assets you have, where they're located, who has access to them, what your access controls look like. Without asset management, it's impossible to secure your organization's digital resources.
There was a question from Commissioner Heather Lifkin from Salisbury Township. She has a question about, is it effective or safe to use Google generated random passwords? Can we trust those randomly generated passwords, you know, where we know that nobody else has same or similar password?
Yeah, I mean, random passwords are exactly what you want to use. Using any password manager tool, if you're using an Apple computer, it has it built in. I even think Microsoft's password manager now has it built in where it's going to give you a random password to use for a website. You know, random passwords are the best way. It's how do you keep track of them then? And that's where the password manager comes in. I will tell you from a password manager standpoint, Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, The only security around those is your user's password. So if I'm able to get into your account because I know your password, I'm able to bypass and get into your Google Chrome's password manager and see all those passwords. So the password that you're using for your password manager should be something different. So using a random generator is absolutely the right kind of mentality. I always recommend setting it from 12 to 16 digits long. 12 really, I say, is the minimum because I think it's like 30 billion years if it's using the 4 layers of complexity and is at 12 characters until current technology today could breach that password. If it's 8 characters and it's all numbers, I'm already in your password, so it's not even, playtime anymore. And that's even without knowing what it is. It's just taking the hash of what I can see, what your password may be, putting that in to a chat GPT like tool and saying, hash this credential, and it's going to give me the answer. So technology today, it's roughly 30 billion years for that 12-digit password with the 4 steps of complexity. Did that answer the question?
She just said, yes, it did. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. So, where we're at today, and I kind of just mentioned it, is evaluate and test your cyber culture. The Cybersecurity Association of Pennsylvania and our partners want to help you. We do have municipality security audits available. They're typically anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, depending on how large of an environment you have. Are we going into the police department? Things like that. Our teams, that we partner with, they're CGIS certified. They've gone through the different things that we can look at areas, we can do different things. So from the law enforcement side, the fire department, like we meet the complexities to do it. But I highly recommend if you haven't had a third-party security audit done to do a third-party security audit, get someone in that hasn't seen your environment, that doesn't know your environment, and get a fresh set of eyes to look at it. What that's going to do, it's a small investment, but it truly is that investment, but it gives you a roadmap on how to improve and what are things you need to do. The partners that I work with, they're going to work with your existing cybersecurity, partners that you have today, the MSPs or your internal team. We're not trying to come in and say they're doing things wrong. At the end of the day, we just want to help you improve your cybersecurity culture. We want to make sure you're doing the things like the cybersecurity annual training. We want to make sure you're using multi-factor authentication and you're checking the basic boxes as well as the more advanced ones. So it is critical that you evaluate and you test your cyber culture. If you're interested in any information in the chat, I'll put my email address. More than happy to put you in touch with one of our partners or, from the Cybersecurity Association, of Pennsylvania side, we do some of them ourselves, depending on the environment. But more than happy to work with you guys, talk to you. Any questions that anybody have?
I see a question from Mr. Andrew. What about the use of pass keys?
You're talking about the quick, almost like the shortcuts, where instead of typing in my password, I'm typing in a 4-digit or a 6-digit code. I think it's with Windows Hello. Am I thinking the right thing, Andrew? So your bank is, so that's probably a digital credential that's allowing you to log in without a password. So what they're doing is they're giving you a certificate that the system that you're logging into is saying, is this certificate here? If it is here, then yes. If it's a certificate, then chances are it's pretty trustworthy, but certificates have been breached in the past. So there is an area of security. And if I learn that all I need is a certificate to get access to a bank, if I can gain access to your computer, I can copy that certificate, move it to another computer. And depending on the security that that bank or Verizon has on the back end, it may bypass all security controls because now I have the cookie or that security certificate to let me through the next step. Now, I will say in a lot that I've seen that's using certificates, it's typically tying that to a MAC address. So you have that MAC address as verification 1, the certificate's verification 2. So that way, if I put it on a different machine and I don't know the MAC address, I'm getting a rejection or I'm getting a, hey, we need to add this as an approved device. So your iPhone recently installed passwords on my phone and seems to automatically save passwords and then fill them in. So if you're using the iPhone, Apple has the passwords app that is there. They moved it out of the settings and into an actual app. But Apple stores passwords. They're secure, but they're also tied to the same biometrics or the passcode of your phone. If I open up passwords on my iPhone here right now, the only thing I will need to get access to it if my face isn't working is the PIN code to the device. And if my PIN code is compromised or someone else knows my PIN code, my kids unfortunately do because they're just really smart at theory. If prompted, they could get into it.
I think we've seen a lot of those crime TV shows, right? But so in general, Scott, are you saying that using biometrics on your phone is kind of not that secure?
Well, using biometrics adds a level of security, and it should be a form of a secondary authentication step instead of a singular. Now, when we're talking about phones, that phone you have has more data on it than your computer does. It has health records. It has information from your Apple Watch if you're wearing an Apple Watch or a Samsung Watch to an Android, same thing. But it has health data on it. It has contacts. It has passwords. It has what websites I go to. My banking information is probably a favorite. So it has enough information that really becomes a gold mine to a cyber attacker if they get an unlocked phone. So utilizing the same password manager that's built in can pose a risk because if I'm in that device. And if I know the passcode's 1234, because I have seen people put their little passcode on the backside of their phone inside the case. So if they forget what their PIN code is, they can still get into it. It's no different than putting it underneath your keyboard at the office. We should not be sharing passwords. We should not be sharing PIN codes, even with the children. There's different things. Great question.
Thank you. I have a different type of question. It's more about cyber policy. So not sure, Scott, if you're familiar with this, but my understanding is if there is a breach in Pennsylvania, I think there was some law where we have to notify the victims within so many days. What are some of the responsibilities as municipal leaders or municipal managers or anyone who are managing this type of responsibility? What are some of the things that they need to keep in mind? If something happened, how soon we detect, and if we detect, how soon we need to notify people. And then if we're using a third-party tool such as like pay our utility bills or something, if they get compromised, essentially they're acting on behalf of us. Do we have any responsibility for such types of breaches?
So from a government standpoint, yes, you have to report a breach under Pennsylvania's Breach of Personal Information Notification Act. As a government agency, you have to report it to the Attorney General when the data breach occurs. But the reality is you don't know about a breach until you know about it. And to know a breach occurs takes a level of intelligence that you're not going to find out immediately. You have to do an investigation, no different than, police departments are going to, the police chief is going to do an investigation before he arrests somebody. You're not just going to go out on a whim and say, hey, you were breached. Ha ha ha. You have to do an investigation into the data side, identify what data was potentially compromised, and then from there, identify was there information that results in the need to do that notification. And that's where working with a trusted team, a cybersecurity professional, lawyers, etc., can help guide you through those steps. The law also requires you to provide credit reports monitoring to affected individuals depending on what data is breached. Alex, thank you for posting, the link there, but or Alok, sorry, but there's a lot of different things that go into consideration, and as soon as you realize that a breach has occurred, don't shut anything down. Unplug it from the network, disconnect it from the Wi-Fi, and call your trusted IT professional, call your attorney, or more and more, call your cyber insurance provider because they're going to guide you through those steps. And in a lot of times, in a lot of situations, they have a list of people to call to make sure things are being done the right way.
Jump in here a bit. So Scott, thank you for mentioning that actually. So I think you're hitting several pieces of important information that we need to have. So obviously, as Alok pointed, we have a responsibility to report, but we have to know what to report first if we really have to report something. So it goes back to the need to have a cybersecurity posture and framework for all our local governments, right? That's number one. And number two, I think more importantly, we have to have cybersecurity insurance. So I'm not sure. I have to ask my township if we have that, because if we don't, that will cover us, and more importantly, help us recover, you know, for these things.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions here, but if you do have questions, please send it to us or in a post here. Feel free to email later. We'll get in touch with Scott to get answers for you. But this was super helpful, so I wanted to thank both Scott and Fred for hosting this. Just for everyone's knowledge, we are going to be hosting these series monthly, last Wednesday of every month. So next will be 26th of February. If you have a topic or if you have an interesting story you want to share as a speaker, please let us know. Stay in touch. We will get you scheduled for one of those opportunities in future. So February 26th will be our next event. We'll be sending out same way invitations to everyone to sign up. Thank you everyone for joining. The recording will be posted on our website.
Real quick, if I can just say one other thing before people sign off too far is, please take a minute, go to pencyber.com. We're creating a new government community. The community is almost like a peer group for the IT professionals or the township managers, the borough managers that are out there, as a way to give resources back to the governments, the way to help you do a better job. With it being Data Privacy Week, we just released publicly on the website an AI policy, as AI is an important component, and you may not be using it, but chances are someone within your organization is using AI in some way to do their job. It could be just with Apple Intelligence, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Microsoft Copilot, or even the DeepSeek that is this brand new one out of China. But having an AI policy is critical because your employees have to understand what is appropriate, what is acceptable, because any information you put into those AI platforms is used for those AI to learn, and ultimately will share that information with others. The greatest example of that is a couple years ago, Samsung engineers were using ChatGPT to cross-check their code. They were putting the code in, and then what happened is ChatGPT learned that code and started sharing that code with non-Samsung employees. So now Samsung's proprietary code has been fully compromised because engineers were trying to save themselves time, which it saved them time, but it compromised the business through the process. If you're not sure, I would say you want to make sure you're banning the use of AI today for all of your staff. Make the time, let's sit down, let's go through, let's create the policy that works, that's effective. I highly recommend the Microsoft Copilot platform. It ties into your existing Microsoft 365 accounts, and it gives you that capability of running it within your environment or within the globe. So AI is definitely a topic, but visit pencyber.com. Consider joining PenCyber as a government affiliate and, joining that peer group, what we're calling the community.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Fred, for hosting.